Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast that comes to you from the strife-torn Israel-Gaza border belt. I'm Gaurav Sawant. This special broadcast comes to you from the abandoned township of Sderot. Now, this is used to be a bustling township of about 30,000 people, lies virtually abandoned today. Hamas continues to target townships like this, localities like this, and that artillery fire that you hear, the boom that you just heard, is the Israeli army hitting back and hitting hard to decimate the Hamas leadership. Just a few hours back, we were on ground zero where the Israeli artillery was pounding the Hamas strongholds. I bring you this ground report. I am right at the front lines, and this is where you have the Israeli army artillery position. You can see those guns one after the other there. That officer and that team, they're loading that gun there behind me, that other gun position, and one after the other, these multiple guns are booming and targeting Hamas targets. This is right at the front lines. We are right now barely a couple of kilometers from the Gaza Strip. In fact, you can see Gaza with the naked eye from where I am standing. These guns have now been, this is a dugout gun position. It's a proper artillery gun position where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guns, which means this is an important position. These 8 guns are now targeting Hamas strongholds. What you have here behind me are guns that are decimating. There you see. These guns that are firing, they're decimating Hamas leadership bases based on inputs that they're getting. Now, in the skies above, you can also see drones that are constantly keeping an eye. Drones that are constantly keeping an eye on every movement and where the shells are landing. In case the shells are not landing exactly where they're meant to land, then a correction is given and then another round is fired. This is systematically punishing the Hamas. This is exactly what the Israeli army is doing right now. And we are at the front lines of this war, Israel's war on radical Islamist terror, Israel's war on Hamas. There has been some criticism of area weapons that are being used because a shell like that is one, like the one that you see right behind me, when this falls, it causes a lot of damage. But as far as Israel is concerned, the officers we've spoken to, they're very clear that they are destroying Hamas strongholds. Their main aim today is to target some of those tunnels where the Hamas uses those tunnels to ferry, transport not just terrorists but also rockets that have been targeting towns like Ashkelon and Sderot, where I am right now. Some of these rockets, Hamas continues even today to have the capability to target these locations. And today there has been some loss of life and property in Sderot, where I was just a short while back, and police and the army are asking people to evacuate very quickly. People are being asked to evacuate because there is an apprehension as this artillery attack, this artillery assault intensifies. As this artillery assault intensifies on Hamas strongholds, there will be some positions from where they will hit back. They will also target the Israeli towns and cities, and Sderot and Ashkelon are 2 places they would target. In Sderot, people are being asked to move to safer locations. Some houses have been damaged, some people have been hurt. Now police are going door to door asking people to move. Buses are going to be requisitioned, cars are being requisitioned, volunteers are being called in to ask people to move out of this area. We were also asked to move out of this area by the army and the police. They said it's not safe to be here because when there is an artillery attack like the one that's taking place, there is what is known as CB or counter bombardment that takes place. Of course, that happens more in the case of an organized army because an organized army then uses its weapon locating radars to strike back. In this case, we do not know if Hamas has those kinds of capabilities, but Hamas does have the capability to strike. That is why you also have their air defense system in place for if more terrorists want to come in from hang gliders, they will be hanged, as one of the officers told me. He said this is our Pearl Harbor moment. America was surprised in Pearl Harbor. Then America destroyed the perpetrators of the Pearl Harbor attack. He said this is what has happened to us. We've woken up. We were in deep slumber. We've woken up, but now we will completely decimate the enemy, which is the Hamas, which is what these guns right behind me are doing right now. Despite the Israeli forces repeatedly targeting Hamas strongholds, both from the air and on ground, you have the F-16 fighter jets, you have the 155mm howitzers, you have the rockets and the missiles pounding the Gaza Strip. Yet there remain some strongholds of the Hamas from where the Hamas terrorists continue to target Israel. In fact, several localities, not just here in Sderot, but even in Ashkelon, have been targeted. People have been injured. Homes have been abandoned. In fact, some localities are being cleared even now. And this is day 6 of Israel's operation to decimate the Hamas terror. I quickly want to now cut across and bring you a report of India Today's Ashutosh Mishra reporting from Ground Zero in Ashkelon.
Now tanks rolling towards the Gaza border. Israel is gearing up for a full-scale ground invasion. Days after the terror attack by Hamas, people of Israel are yet to come to terms with the horror they suffered. India Today is in Ashkelon, a city just 10 kilometers away from Gaza border, which is bearing the brunt of the Hamas rocket attacks.
Right behind me, few kilometers, where the Gaza Strip territory begins. And this is where the rocket attacks take place. The rockets come from right from this direction. They go all over in the sky. The Iron Dome targets and neutralizes all the rockets. But a piece of them literally falling down in the city.
Badly damaged buildings, deserted roads. The city on the Mediterranean coast is a far cry from its busy avatar just a week ago.
Situation is so grim that the threat is so imminent that even on Wednesday, several terrorists infiltrated from this Mediterranean coastal line from this side, from the Gaza Strip areas. So, you know, everyone they see with the eyes of this suspicion, they suspect that it could be anyone. And then the way we are geared up because of the safety precautions, anytime there could be rocket attacks. So this is all a must gear.
Anger among the citizens is evident.
Hamas represents all the bad there is in the world, and they don't differentiate between people, between children. Today it Israel, tomorrow it will be Europe, Russia, even India, every place in the world. We have to be united.
As Israel tightens the siege and bombs the Palestinian territory of Gaza, both sides are counting the dead.
It's very sad to see such a beautiful promenade, quiet like a graveyard. People are afraid to go out from the houses. Shops are afraid to open their doors. It's a terrible, terrible situation.
Hundreds of reservists are joining duty as Israel scales up its attacks.
This time it has been the same case with the army personnel. Men, young soldiers have been tortured, abducted, kidnapped by Hamas terrorists.
Yes, that is correct. We received the videos as soon as it happened. Our enemies are not shy of showing the most brutal of crimes ever committed. And I personally sat at home on Saturday morning and I witnessed everything because it's so easy to get videos on Telegram and whatever. Again, they're not shying from showing it. And it was very difficult to see, yeah.
The task will not be easy. A scarred nation and its citizens are looking for vengeance. With Ashutosh Mishra from Ashkelon, Bureau Report, India Today.
This is day 6 of Israel's attack on Hamas terror bases. Even on day 6, you have Israel that's taken multiple measures to ensure that its territory is kept safer, and yet the Hamas territories are completely pulverized. A task, of course, easier said than done. There is also some mobilization that is taking place. Just a short while back, I was reporting from one of the front lines where the Markava tanks of the Israeli armor, the armored personal carriers, the armored fighting vehicles, infantry combat vehicles, and several other vehicles were moving towards the front lines. This happens at a time when the artillery is already pounding the Hamas strongholds. Is this an indication of times to come? Is it all set to indicate that the Israeli army entering the Gaza Strip is now just a matter of time?
Increasingly destructive raids from up in the air.
אנחנו נלחמים באויב אכזר, אויב שהוא גרוע מדאעש.
Israel's new war cabinet vows to wipe Hamas off the earth, forged an emergency government on Wednesday to direct war against Hamas.
אנשים ונשים שנשרפו בעודם חיים.
The Israel-Hamas war has already claimed 2,300 lives on both sides since the October 7th surprise attack by the terrorist group on Israeli territory. Unrelenting retaliatory airstrikes by Israel have reduced the entire city blocks of Gaza to rubble, leaving unknown numbers of bodies beneath the debris.
The scenes are out of a zombie movie. It's a war zone. And today the many body bags were evacuated from that kibbutz.
On Wednesday, Hamas launched rockets again into Israel's southern town of Ashkelon.
ये है वो रॉकेट जो दरअसल आया हमास की ओर से. इसकी लंबाई देखिए, यही वो रॉकेट है लगभग 1.5 फुट लंबा, जिसका अब ये खाली शेल है, लेकिन ये खाली शेल भी मैं उठा नहीं सकता.
A ground offensive looks imminent as the Israeli government has created a wartime cabinet to oversee the fight.
What you hear behind me is the roar of the Israeli tanks. It's these tanks which are now moving to the front line. Like, watch very closely. These are tanks of the Israeli army. These are armored personal carriers.
While the death toll in Gaza has risen to 1,200 early Thursday. According to the United Nations, the number of people displaced by Israeli airstrikes has soared to over 339,000. 2/3 of them crowding into United Nations schools. Home to some 2 million people, more than half of them living in poverty. The 40-kilometer-long Gaza Strip, wedged between Israel, Egypt and the Mediterranean Sea, is bracing for an all-out ground raid by Israeli forces, far bigger than the 2 invasions Israel mounted before. With Ashutosh Mishra in Ashkelon and Gaurav Sawant from the Gaza border, Bureau Report, India Today.
The death toll in the worst terror attack on Israel has now risen to 1,300. Several people are injured and critical. The number of injured is more than 2,000. India Today's open source intelligence input seem to indicate that there were several mistakes that Israel made at multiple stages. Right now, if you look all around me, you have the army here. Look at the massive deployment of the army all around. Not only is the army deployed right at the borders, but you also have multiple convoys crossing through. You have the police, you have the other security forces forming a multi-tier security grid. But this wasn't there on Saturday when the terror attack happened. But this, of course, was not just an operations failure. It was also an intelligence failure of a massive scale, because the Hamas terrorists were undergoing power glider and hand glider training for several months, if not longer. And let me tell you much more on that big story about the signs that Israel failed to read. India Today's Ankit Kumar with this India Today exclusive report.
From artillery rockets to paragliders to drones to terrorist foot soldiers, the tactics of the Hamas terrorist group have exploded upon the world, and none of it could be orchestrated without rigorous planning. Geolocation of video footage released by the Hamas in the aftermath of the attacks on October the 7th shows the terror group had set up mock Israeli settlements in Gaza, known as the world's largest open prison, within just a few kilometers from the Israeli border. The groundwork for these preparations started sometime in 2020 with land clearing and the creation of a flat surface for the powered paraglider rehearsals. They were conducted openly, using commercial flying equipment easily accessible in Israel and Europe. Hamas operatives would practice takeoff from this space situated roughly 3.5 kilometers from the Egyptian border to the south and would land at a location 800 meters away. The landing site had mock-ups for target practice, small buildings that looked like security outposts, and walls marked with the Israeli symbol, the Star of David. The propaganda footage shows Hamas operatives using kamikaze drones, which can also be geolocated to a nearby field. These should have been virtually impossible to escape the notice of any intelligence agency, particularly one as advanced as Israel's. The Hamas leadership's strike weapon is the Al-Qassam rocket. While these rockets have been fired several times before, on October the 7th, Hamas fired thousands of these in short waves, effectively jamming Israel's Iron Dome system. So if some of the rockets were intercepted mid-air, most hit Israeli targets with devastating effect. Egypt, which often serves as a mediator between Israel and Hamas, had spoken repeatedly with the Israelis about something big without elaborating or going into specifics. In the aftermath of the attack, Israel debunked any such early warning claims. But the fact remains that despite round-the-clock sophisticated surveillance, Israel was clueless about what was happening in its backyard for nearly 3 years. Innocent people are paying the price for this colossal, systemic intelligence failure, while the political authorities play the game of revenge attack.
You can hear the artillery shells in the background. You can also hear the roar of the F-16 fighter jets. Israel is now pounding the Hamas strongholds at the Gaza Strip. Israel also wants to decimate the military leadership and the war-fighting capabilities of Hamas as a terrorist organization. They're looking not just for Mohammed Daif, the Hamas military commander. His houses have been bombed, the anchorage, other locations, other logistic locations, training centers, all of them have been bombed. But the big question remains, where is the Hamas military leadership as of now? How many of them are alive? How many of them have been killed? How many of them are hiding in safe houses, whether in Lebanon or even in Qatar? We bring you this report.
Hamas briefly invaded Israeli territory, documented it in slick videos, some by militants wearing body cams. The operatives dressed in commando-style uniforms. An attack designed to shake up the status quo in the Middle East. But while the Hamas operatives launched their most brazen attack that Israel hasn't seen since the 1948 Arab-Israeli war, the group's leadership was nowhere to be seen in the Gaza Strip. Top leader of Hamas was elsewhere while the foot soldiers perpetrated their most brutal incursion into Israel on Saturday. This is Ismail Haniyeh, the chairman of the group designated as a terror organization by United States, the EU and Israel. Haniyeh and other senior leaders of Hamas enjoying the hospitality of Qatar, a tiny but wealthy energy and investment powerhouse in the Persian Gulf. Qatar long believed to be holding a direct line of communication with Hamas. In 2014, the United States noted that Qatar, though an American ally, has openly financed Hamas and supported several other Islamist extremist groups in the Middle East. Qatar drew global attention once again over the initial reports it may try to negotiate freedom for Israeli hostages held in Gaza after Saturday's attack for the release of Palestinian prisoners in Israel's prisons. Qatar has hosted a Hamas political office for more than a decade, provided millions of dollars in financial aid to Gaza, and provided a safe haven to the top Hamas leadership. Bureau Report, India Today.
Israel has decided it will punish Hamas. It will ensure that Hamas no longer has the capability to strike Israel, to remain a potent military threat, a terror threat to future generations in Israel. But the situation remains extremely grim, with Hamas continuing to pound Sderot, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and several such localities here in the southern part of Israel. Those kibbutz, those concentrations, those locations which are very, very close to the Gaza Strip, very close to that line that divides Gaza and Israel. But we will continue to report from ground zero. We will continue to get you the latest. That is all I have for you on this special broadcast from Sderot in southern Israel. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.